Hey everyone, my name is Anne and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to crochet this mini dress. I'll be making a small in this video, but you can find sizes X small to 3X large in this tutorial and also in the written pattern that I have linked down below. But yeah, here are the supplies you'll be needing. So here are all of the supplies you're going to be needing for this project. I have the Carron Pound of One yarn in taupe, as well as some scissors, my large tapestry needle, and here is my 5.5mm hook. This is all of the supplies you're going to be needing, so let's go ahead and get started. So beginning on this pattern, we're going to be starting on the bottom border. So over here I have my 5.5mm hook, and I am using my accent color, which is my white color in this case. To begin each pattern, you of course want to start off with a slip knot. And you can do this any way you would like, just tighten it up. Now from here, we're going to make a chain of 50, though this pattern or this video contains sizes X small to 3X large, so the amount of chains that you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side over here. But to make a chain, and because I'm making a size small, I'm going to make a chain of 50. To make a chain, yarn over and pull through. Again, just yarn over and pull through, just like this. So I have just made it back here with my chain of 50. Moving on to row 1, we're going to skip this first chain, and inserting our hook into the second chain, we want to single crochet. To single crochet, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 2. Now from here, chain 1, skip the next chain, and into the next chain, work another single crochet. So again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 2. From here, chain 1, skip a chain, single crochet into the next chain, and now just continue on repeating chain 1, skip a chain, single crochet into the next chain, into each chain all the way across until the end. So I have just finished working all the way down my row with my moss stitch. Once you reach the end, go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work around. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch for the rest of the pattern. Moving on to row 2, you want to skip this first turning chain and inserting our hook into this first stitch, single crochet. Now you want to single crochet again, except this time you want to single crochet into the chain 1 space and not into the chain. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that chain 1 space and then just work a single crochet. From here, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then single crochet once again into this chain 1 space. Chain 1 again, skip the next stitch, single crochet into the chain 1 space, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then a single crochet into that chain 1 space again. Now just repeat doing this pattern into each stitch all the way across your row until you have 1 stitch at the end remaining. So I have just finished working all the way down my row, as you can see, and I have this one stitch at the end remaining. Into this last stitch, just work one regular single crochet. From here, chain one, turn your work around. Moving on to row 3, skipping this first turning chain because it doesn't count as a stitch, and inserting a hook into this first stitch, single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into this chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into this in the chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain one space. Repeat this into each stitch all the way down your row until you have 2 stitches at the end, and then we're going to change color once we reach the end. So I have just finished working all the way down my row once again, and I have 2 stitches at the end of my row. We're going to chain one, skip the second to last stitch, and then into the last stitch we're going to change color. To change color, insert your hook into that last stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now we're just going to yarn over with our new color, and then pull through both of those loops. Now with the previous color, I'm just going to cut, making sure to leave a long tail for seaming, or not for seaming, just to weave in your end. Yeah. So now that you have a changed color, we're going to move on to the 4th row. So chain one, turn your work. Into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, and now just repeat this pattern into each stitch until you have 1 stitch at the end remaining. And so once you have made it into each stitch coming all the way down your row, into the very last stitch, work 1 single crochet, chain, and turn your work around. Now moving on to row 5, into this first stitch, you want to single crochet, chain one, single crochet into the chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain one space, just as we were doing before, until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row. So I am back here once again with 2 stitches at the end of my row. I'm going to chain one, skip the stitch, and then into this very last stitch we're going to change back to our main color. So I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over with your new color yarn, pull through both of those loops, then I'm just going to cut off. From here, with your new color, chain one, turn your work around. Moving on to row 6, into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet, and then single crochet into the chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain one space, and then now just repeat this pattern going all the way down your row until you have 1 stitch at the end. And so I am back here once again, and I have 1 stitch at the end of my row. I'm just going to single crochet, chain one, turn my work around. Now moving on to row 7, into this first stitch, I'm just going to single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain one space, chain one, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain one space. Then just repeat this process until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row. Now once you have worked all the way down your row and you have 2 stitches at the end, you just want to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and then single crochet into that very last stitch. Chain 1, turn your work around. Now moving on to row 8, we're going to single crochet into this first stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip the stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space. Repeat this all the way across until you have 1 stitch at the end of your row. So I have just finished working all the way down my row. Now into this last stitch, we're going to change our color one more time. I'm just going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over with the new color, pull through both of those loops. So now to continue the pattern for our front or back panel, you want to alternate repeating row 2 and row 7 with our main color yarn until you have a total of 84 rows. But once again, since this video contains sizes X small to 3X large, the amount of rows you'll be making for each size is going to be indicated right on the side over here. But I'm going to finish up working my 84 rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back to work on the shoulder straps. So now this is what my work is looking like after I have completed those 84 rows. The last step to our panel is just going to be working both of the shoulder straps. So from here, we're not going to cut and fasten off. The next step is going to be working the first shoulder strap. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now beginning on the first shoulder strap, I have already chained and turned my work. Into this very first stitch, we're going to single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the chain 1 space. And now we're going to do this until we have 15 stitches across our row. So you're not going to be going all the way across, only into 15 stitches. Once you have made it 15 stitches across your row, into these next 2 stitches, we're going to be working a decrease. To work a decrease, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, then into the chain 1 space, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through everything. From here, chain 1, turn your work. So now moving on to row 2. Into this very first stitch, we're going to work a decrease. So again, insert your hook, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, then yarn over, pull through 3, into the chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, skip, single crochet. Now just repeat your moss stitch into each stitch across, just as we were doing before. Once you reach the end, chain 1 and turn your work. Now moving on to row 3, into this first stitch, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet. Now work your regular moss stitch pattern until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row. Once we reach the end, we're going to do another decrease. So now that I have 2 stitches at the end of my row, I'm going to do a decrease. And then chain 1, turn your work around. So to continue this pattern, you simply want to repeat those 2 decrease rows, which is row 2 and row 3, until you have a total of 8 rows in total for your shoulder strap. So I'm just going to finish working my 8 decrease rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done. So I am back here and I have just finished working up my decrease rows, and I have 8 rows in total for my first shoulder strap. Once I reached the end, I did cut and fasten off. And now that we have finished our first shoulder strap, we're going to get started on our second shoulder strap, which is very similar to what we did over here. So I have my hook. I'm just going to quickly make a slip knot. So now from here, you want to skip 16 stitches and then insert your hook into the 16th stitch. So beginning into this first unworked stitch, I'm going to count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then insert your hook into that 16th stitch. Once you have inserted your hook, yarn over, pull through to secure. From here, chain 1 and turn your work around. So beginning on row 1 into this very first stitch, we're going to work a decrease. Into the next chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet. Now just work your regular moss stitch pattern until the end of your row. Once you reach the end, chain 1 and turn. Now moving on to row 2, single crochet into the first stitch, and single crochet into the first chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space. Now just repeat your regular moss stitch pattern until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row. And once you have these 2 stitches at the end of your row, go ahead and decrease. Chain 1 and turn your work. So now moving on to row 3, which is our last decrease row. Decrease into the very first stitch. Then single crochet into that chain 1 space. Chain 1, single crochet into that chain 1 space. Repeat this in each stitch across. And then once you reach the end, you can just chain 1 and turn your work. But to continue the same pattern is pretty much similar to what we did on the first side. We just want to repeat our 2 decrease rows, which is row 2 and row 3, as I just showed you guys, until you have a total of 8 rows for your second shoulder strap. So I'm going to quickly work up all of my decrease rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I have just finished working up both of my shoulder straps. I repeated row 2 and row 3 just as we did before. Once I reached the end, I did cut and fasten off as usual. Now that we have both of our shoulder straps, you want to repeat this entire process for our front or back panel one more time, because both of our front and back panels are identical. So I have already repeated this process one more time. This is what both of my panels are looking like. This is also what the bottom looks like so far. So now that we have both of our main bodices, we're going to set this aside, and now we're going to get started on working the sleeves. So now we're going to be moving on to working the sleeves. So I have my main color yarn. I'm going to make a slip knot. From this point, make a chain of 44. So once you have finished working up your chain, beginning on row 1, skipping this first chain and inserting our hook into this second chain, we're going to single crochet, chain 1, skip the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, chain 1, skip a chain, single crochet, and now repeat this pattern into each chain all the way across. So once you have finished working all the way down row 1, once you reach the end, you just want to chain 1, turn your work around. Now moving on to row 2, into this very first stitch, we're going to single crochet. Then into the chain 1 space, single crochet again. From here, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, and now repeat this pattern coming all the way across your row until you have 1 stitch at the end remaining. So once you have worked all the way down row 1 and you have this last stitch remaining, into this last stitch, just single crochet, chain 1 and turn your work. Moving on to row 3, into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1 again, skip a stitch, single crochet into this chain 1 space, and now repeat this pattern coming all the way down your row until you have 2 stitches at the end. So I have just finished working all the way down row 3 until I have 2 stitches at the end of my row. Into the last 2 stitches, chain 1, skip the second to last stitch, and then single crochet into the last stitch. As usual, chain 1 and turn your work. So to continue this pattern, you want to repeat row 2 and row 3, those last 2 rows we just worked, until you have a total of 6 rows. So you're only going to do 3 more rows. Once we reach row 6, I'm going to show you how to do the decrease row. I'm just going to repeat row 2, repeat row 3, repeat row 2 one more time, and then I'm going to see you guys back, and then I'm going to meet you guys for row 7. So I am back here and I have just finished working up 6 rows, and now that we have our 6 rows, row 7 is going to be a decrease row. So to do this decrease row, I have already chained and turned my work. Beginning into this first stitch, we're going to work a decrease. Just like this. Into the next stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, and then just repeat this pattern in each stitch all the way across until you have 2 stitches at the end remaining. Then once you have these 2 stitches at the end of your row, go ahead and do another decrease, chain 1 and turn your work. So now to continue the pattern for our sleeve, you want to repeat the last 4 rows, which is going to be row 2, row 3, row 2, row 3, and the very last row you want to repeat is our decrease row, which is row 7. So repeat those 5 rows in that order until you have a total of 37 rows for your sleeve. So I'm going to quickly work all of my decreases up for my sleeve, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I have made it back here with my 37 rows. I repeated row 3, 2, 3, 2, and then 7 until I have 37 rows in total. And now that we are all done with our decreases, the next part is really simple. From rows 37 to 58, you just want to repeat row 2 and row 3, just regular moss stitch pattern, so it's really easy, until you have a total of 58 rows as I mentioned. So that's going to be the last part until we get on to switching up our colors again. So I'm just going to repeat row 2 and row 3 for 57 rows in total, and then I'm going to see you guys back for the next steps. So I have made it back here with my 58 rows. This is what my sleeve is looking like. So now we're going to do the very end of our sleeve. So we're going to be using our accent color over here. The first step to doing that, which is row 59, into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet, then single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space. Then you want to repeat that into each stitch across until you have until you have 1 stitch at the end remaining. And then I'm going to change my color for my white yarn. So I'm going to work that up really quickly, then I'm going to see you guys back once I reach the end. So now that I have 1 stitch at the end of my row, I'm going to change out my color. Chain 1 and turn my work. Moving on to row 60 and row 61, all you want to do here is repeat row 3, and then for the next row repeat row 2. So I have just finished up working row 60 and row 61, repeating row 3 and row 2. Now moving on to row 62, we're going to change color at the very last stitch of this row. So to begin, you just want to do your regular moss stitch pattern, so single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, then single crochet into that chain 1 space, and each stitch all the way across, and then I'm going to show you how to change color once I reach the end. And so as you can see, I have worked all the way down my row. Into this last stitch, I'm just going to change color. Chain 1 and turn. Now row 63 is just going to be a simple repeat row of row 2. So I'll just work that up and then meet you guys back once I reach the end. So I just finished working all the way across my row, once again repeating row 2 for row 64. Now for rows, oh no, sorry, repeat, that was row 63, this is row 64. So now for row 64, we're going to work our regular moss stitch pattern until we have 1 stitch at the end. And then you probably guessed it, we're going to change our color to our accent color one more time. And then into this last stitch, I'm going to change my color. Chain 1 and turn. So now just to finish up this sleeve, row 65 to 67 is just going to be a repeat of row 2, a repeat of row 3, and then a repeat of row 2. Which is just 3 more rows to finish up our sleeve. Once you reach the end, cut and fasten off. But I'm going to finish up working the rest of my sleeves, and then I'm going to see you guys back when I'm all done. So I have just finished up cut and fastening off my sleeve. I just finished up those last 3 rows, and now that's the end. So once you have 1 sleeve done, you of course want to repeat this one more time for a second sleeve. As you can see, I've already done my second sleeve. So now we're just going to set these pieces aside, and now we're going to get started on the collar. So yeah, let's get started on that. Now getting started on the collar, I'm going to first make a slip knot with my accent color. From here, we're going to make a chain of 64. So after you have completed your chain, beginning into the second chain, we're going to do the same thing as we did for the bodice. We're just going to single crochet, chain 1, skip a chain, single crochet, chain 1, skip a chain, and single crochet into each chain all the way down. So I have just worked all the way down my chain as usual. Into this very last chain, I'm going to switch out my color. Just going to insert my hook, pull through, then get my next color, just like this. From here, chain and turn your work. Beginning into this first stitch, we're going to single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, and then just repeat your regular moss stitch pattern until the end of your row. Once you have worked all the way down your row and you have 1 stitch remaining, go ahead and just work 1 single crochet, chain 1, and turn your work around. Now we're going to do our regular moss stitch pattern, just single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into that chain 1 space, into each stitch all the way down until you have 1 stitch at the end of your row. Into this last stitch, we're going to change our color once again. Once you have reached the end of row 2 and you have 1 stitch remaining, or you should have 2 stitches remaining, you want to chain 1, which I already did, then into this very last stitch, I'm just going to change my yarn one more time. There we go. Chain 1 and turn your work. So for row 4 and row 5, these are the very last 2 rows we're going to do for our collar, and they're really easy. All you want to do is just work the last 2 rows are going to be your regular repeat rows for that moss stitch, and then once you reach the end, you can go ahead and cut and fasten off. But since I have already showed you kind of those 2 repeat rows, I'm going to work up these 2 more rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I'm all done. So I have just finished up my 4th and 5th row, and I cut and fastened off once I reached the end. And now that we have our 2 front and back panels, our 2 sleeves, and then our collar, we're now going to piece everything together in the next step, which is going to be the seaming. So now we're going to be moving on to the seaming. So over here I have both of my panels, and the wrong side is facing me on both of the panels right now. I'm going to grab my tapestry needle and my yarn, and to start seaming our bodice, we're going to begin in the very bottom of our work. We're going to whip stitch all the way up the side until we have 6 inches from the top remaining, and that 6 inches from the top is going to leave room for our sleeves. So to whip stitch, I'm going to once again insert my hook into the very first stitch, just like this, and then into the first stitch on the other panel and pull through. Now doing this again, I'm going to come all the way back around and insert my hook into the next 2 stitches, and then just pull through. Into the next 2 stitches, insert my hook, pull straight through, into the next 2 stitches, just like this, pull through, inserting again, pull straight through, and now just continue to whip stitch all the way down the side of your panel until you have 6 inches from the top. So I'm going to do this on this side, and then I'm also going to do it on the second side, of course. So I have made a back here with my bodice all seamed up. I whip stitched all the way up the sides until I had 6 inches remaining. Did that on both sides, as you can see. And I did go ahead and whip stitch the 2 shoulder straps together. So I just started in the very top corner and then whip stitch all the way across until the end. Same thing on the second shoulder strap as well. Whip stitch all the way across until the end. Now the next step you want to seam is your sleeves. To seam your sleeve, I'm just going to fold my sleeve horizontally. And then now beginning on either end, starting here, you just want to whip stitch into each stitch all the way across, and then you can cut and fasten off once you reach the end. Once you have your sleeve seamed up, you then just want to attach it to your bodice, so you just want to put it adjacent, and then whip stitch all the way around the armhole to like connect it, right? And then after you complete both of the sleeves, attaching them to your bodice, all you want to do is just take the collar, place it evenly around the head hole, and then just whip stitch it in place, going all the way around the base. So that was a lot to take in, but basically I'm going to seam my sleeves, attach it to the bodice, and then just seam my collar and attach it to the bodice. So I'm going to complete all of that up, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I'm done. Alrighty guys, so I am back here with all of my work seamed up. I did both of my sleeves, and this is what they look like, and my collar just like this. And now that we have all of the elements to our sweater all done, that is pretty much the last step to your project. The last thing you need to do is just weave in all of your loose ends for a neat look. But yeah, that is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this helpful. Bye! If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. If you bought this pattern, it would be super helpful if you left a positive review. But that's all guys, bye!